I watched my daughter Sarah lean close to her husband Mark at my 67th birthday lunch, her whisper cutting through the restaurant chatter. While I keep her busy, you go change the locks at her house. My fork froze halfway to my mouth as Mark nodded and slipped away. But what Sarah didn't know was that I'd installed security cameras throughout my property just last week. As I pretended to enjoy my salmon, my phone silently buzzed with motion alerts from home. The Golden Fork had always been my favorite restaurant in Dallas. Its crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths, and the soft piano music usually soothed my soul. But today, on my 67th birthday, something felt different. Wrong even. Sarah had insisted on this particular table by the window, fussing over the seating arrangement like a wedding planner. Her energy crackled with nervous electricity as she adjusted her navy blazer for the third time since we'd arrived. Mom, you look absolutely stunning. She gushed, her eyes lingering on my emerald necklace. Is that the one Dad gave you for your anniversary? I touched the stones gently. Robert had given it to me 3 months before the construction accident that took him from us 35 years ago. Sarah had been just 16 then, angry at the world, and especially at me for not somehow preventing her father's death. Yes, sweetheart, your father had excellent taste. I studied my daughter's face, noticing the calculating gleam I'd been seeing more often lately. Mark pulled out my chair with a flourish that seemed rehearsed. In our 15 years of knowing each other, my son-in-law had never shown such impeccable manners. His usual slouch had been replaced by rigid posture, and his phone, typically glued to his hand, remained tucked away. Happy birthday, Eve, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. 67 years young. I settled into my seat, my mind drifting to how different life had become. After Robert died, I'd had 2 choices: crumble or build. With a teenage daughter to support and a mountain of debt from Robert's medical bills, I'd chosen to build. Starting with small renovation projects, I'd worked my way up in the male-dominated construction industry. My hands grew calloused, my skin tanned from hours in the Texas sun, and my reputation slowly solidified. Greene Construction became known for quality work and honest pricing. By the time Sarah graduated college, I'd expanded into real estate development. Now, 3 decades later, my company employed over 200 people and had developed some of Dallas's most sought-after commercial properties. Sarah had never shown interest in the business. She'd wrinkled her nose at my work boots and hard hat, preferring her job at a marketing firm that seemed to produce more lunch meetings than actual campaigns. I'd accepted her choice, proud that she'd found her own path. But something had shifted 6 months ago. Suddenly, Sarah called daily, asking about my health, my doctor appointments, my daily routine. She'd appear at my house unannounced, finding excuses to go through my mail or peek at my computer screen. Champagne. Sarah flagged down our server before I could respond. We'll take a bottle of your best. It's a special occasion. I raised an eyebrow. Sarah and Mark had claimed money troubles just last month, telling me their car needed expensive repairs. Yet here she was ordering champagne that probably cost more than their supposed repair bill. And was that a new handbag? The designer logo gleamed against leather that still smelled of the boutique. That's very generous, dear, I said carefully. Are you sure you want to splurge? Oh, Mom, she laughed, a brittle sound that reminded me of breaking glass. You only turned 67 once. Besides, Mark just got a promotion. Mark's face flushed as he shifted in his seat. Through the window, I could see the parking lot where a new BMW sat in the handicapped space dealer tag still attached. The same BMW Mark had been driving when they arrived, despite their financial woes. The champagne arrived with unnecessary fanfare. Sarah raised her glass, her voice carrying across nearby tables. To my wonderful mother and all her amazing years, may the next chapter be filled with rest and relaxation. Rest and relaxation. Interesting choice of words from a daughter who knew I still arrived at job sites by 6 in the morning. As we perused our menus, Sarah launched into a strange monologue about memory and aging. I was reading this article about how important it is to monitor our loved ones for signs of confusion. Did you know that 60% of people over 65 experience some form of cognitive decline? Is that so? I kept my voice neutral while selecting the salmon special. Oh, yes. In fact, I noticed something concerning last week. She leaned forward, her expression radiating false concern. When I used your computer to check my email, I saw you'd been searching about memory loss and confusion. Mom, why didn't you tell me you were worried? I had made no such searches. My browsing history consisted mainly of construction supply catalogs and weather forecasts for job sites, but I simply nodded, filing this lie away. We all have moments, dear. Just last week I forgot where I put my reading glasses. I didn't mention they'd been on top of my head exactly where I always kept them while reviewing blueprints. Sarah seized on this like a hawk spotting prey. Exactly. That's why I've been researching some lovely retirement communities, places where you could relax without worrying about maintaining that big house. I could schedule some tours next week. Our entrees arrived, providing a momentary distraction. The salmon was perfectly prepared, flaky, and seasoned with herbs, but it might as well have been cardboard as I processed my daughter's words. She wanted me in a retirement home. Me who still outworked contractors half my age. Your house must be such a burden, Mark added, apparently finding his voice. All that maintenance, the security concerns. Crime rates in your neighborhood have been rising. Another lie. My neighborhood remained one of Dallas's safest, with private security patrols and vigilant neighbors who looked out for each other. But I nodded sympathetically. You might be right. Perhaps I should look into updating my security system. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd had a state-of-the-art system installed just last week, complete with cameras covering every angle of my property. The technician had called it Fort Knox for the residential market. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face transformed. Whatever she read pleased her immensely. Excuse me for just a moment, she said, standing quickly. As she walked toward the restroom, I saw her typing furiously. My own phone, set to silent, vibrated in my purse. Without drawing attention, I glanced at the notification. Motion detected at front door. Then another. Vehicle in driveway. The dessert menu appeared, and Sarah returned, practically glowing with excitement. She slid back into her seat and immediately leaned toward Mark. I caught every word of her whispered instruction. While I keep her busy, you go change the locks at her house. Mark nodded, his chair scraping against the floor as he stood. Excuse me, Eve. Work emergency. You know how it is. Of course, I replied smoothly, though we all knew Mark's job as a mid-level insurance adjuster rarely involved weekend emergencies. As his footsteps faded, I reached for my phone again. The security app opened to live footage of Mark's BMW pulling into my driveway. He sat in the car for a moment on his phone, then grabbed a toolbox from his trunk. Sarah signaled for more coffee, her smile bright and false as our server approached. Mom, while we have some time alone, I wanted to discuss something important. I sipped my water, watching her over the rim of my glass while keeping one eye on my phone screen. Mark was now at my front door, examining the lock with confusion spreading across his features. Of course, dear. What's on your mind? Well, she began, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. I've been thinking about your future, your legacy. Don't you think it's time to start planning for eventual transitions? On my screen, Mark produced what appeared to be a lock-picking set. My lips twitched. Good luck with that, son. The biometric locks I'd installed last week would confound even experienced locksmiths without the proper codes. What kind of transitions? I asked innocently. Sarah's eyes gleamed. Oh, making sure your affairs are in order, protecting your assets, ensuring everything you've worked for goes to the right people. The right people. As if I hadn't already created an ironclad estate plan with the best attorneys in Dallas. But Sarah didn't know that. Just like she didn't know about the cameras recording Mark's increasingly frustrated attempts to breach my home's security. I settled back in my chair, decision made. My daughter wanted to play games. Well, she'd forgotten who she was playing against. I hadn't built an empire by being naive or trusting. And if Sarah thought she could outsmart the woman who'd survived 35 years in construction, negotiated with mob-connected concrete suppliers, and faced down corporate titans trying to steal my contracts, she was about to learn a very hard lesson. More coffee would be lovely. I told the server, my smile genuine for the first time all afternoon. I have a feeling we're going to be here a while. Sarah's fingers drummed against the white tablecloth as she waited for the server to finish pouring coffee. Her nervous energy filled the space between us like static electricity before a storm. I maintained my pleasant expression while discreetly checking my phone. Mark had abandoned the front door and was now circling my house, peering into windows like a common burglar. You were saying something about planning, I prompted, stirring cream into my coffee with deliberate slowness. Yes. Sarah practically pounced on the opening. You know, Mom, at your age, it's crucial to have everything properly organized. I worry about you handling all those complex business dealings alone. At my age. As if 67 meant I'd suddenly lost the ability to read contracts or calculate square footage. I'd closed a $10 million deal just last Tuesday, negotiating terms that would make seasoned developers weep with envy. That's thoughtful of you to worry, I said, watching Mark discover my side entrance on the security feed. Speaking of planning, I've been thinking about updating my will, perhaps adding some charitable donations. Sarah's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Charitable donations? But Mom, what about family? What about your grandchildren's education funds? Interesting. Tommy and Emma already had substantial education trusts I'd established at their births, though I'd never told Sarah the exact amounts. Her children would graduate college debt-free with enough left over for graduate school if they chose. Oh, the children are already well provided for, I assured her. But there's always room for adjustments. Do you know a good estate attorney? Actually, yes. Sarah reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a business card so quickly she must have had it ready. Judith Crane specializes in elder law and estate planning. She's helped several of my friends' parents. Elder law, not estate planning or tax law, but elder law. The kind of attorney who knew how to have people declared incompetent and strip them of their autonomy. I accepted the card with appropriate gratitude. How considerate. I'll give her a call next week. I slipped the card into my purse where it would join the others Sarah had been pushing on me. Geriatric specialists, senior living advisors, memory care consultants. Quite the collection. Why wait? Sarah pressed. I could call her right now, see if she has any openings tomorrow. On a Sunday, that seems presumptuous. Oh, Judith won't mind. We're very close. Sarah was already reaching for her phone when I noticed movement on my security app. Mark had retreated to the backyard where he stood staring up at my security cameras with dawning comprehension. Actually, dear, let's talk about the grandchildren, I redirected. How are Tommy and Emma doing in school? The change of subject frustrated Sarah, but she couldn't ignore a question about her children without seeming suspicious. They're fine. Tommy's struggling a bit with math, and Emma started dance classes. Struggling with math. He's always been so bright with numbers. Remember when he was 5 and counted all the tiles in my kitchen? Sarah's brow furrowed. Yes, he did do that. She seemed surprised I remembered. Listen, Mom, I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. The moment she left, I opened my phone fully and scrolled through the security footage. Mark had made 3 calls in the last 10 minutes, his agitation increasing with each one. I caught him mouthing what looked like profanity as he gestured wildly at my house. Mrs. Greene, our server appeared. The lady at table 12 asked me to give you this. I accepted the folded napkin, recognizing the handwriting immediately. Jennifer Watson, my attorney, had impeccable timing. Her note was brief, commenced as discussed. Documents filed at 2:15 today. I smiled and nodded toward table 12, where Jennifer sat with her husband ostensibly enjoying a birthday lunch of their own. What Sarah didn't know was that Jennifer and I had been preparing for this moment for months, ever since Sarah first started her suspicious behavior. Sarah returned slightly breathless just as my phone showed Mark climbing back into his car. His shoulders slumped in defeat as he started the engine. "Everything all right, dear?" I asked. "You look flushed." "Fine. Everything's fine." She glanced repeatedly toward the entrance. "Mom, I've been meaning to ask, have you been feeling more tired lately? Any confusion or forgetfulness?" "Well," I said slowly, pretending to consider, "there was that incident last week with Emma's name." Sarah leaned forward eagerly. "What incident?" "Oh, I called her Emily by mistake. Silly of me." I hadn't, of course. Emma had been Emma since the day she was born, and I'd never confused her with anyone else. "Mom, that's concerning." Sarah's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Confusion with names can be an early warning sign. I've been doing research, and there are tests we could have done, just to be safe." She produced a folder from her handbag, spreading papers across the table like a blackjack dealer. I recognized the form's immediately medical power of attorney healthcare proxy and what looked suspiciously like competency evaluation consent forms. "I took the liberty of filling out some paperwork," she explained, "just in case we need it. You'd be amazed how quickly things can deteriorate once cognitive decline begins." I picked up the healthcare proxy form, noting that Sarah had already filled in her name as primary decision maker. The presumption would have been amusing if it weren't so calculating. "This is quite thorough," I murmured. "You've certainly done your homework." "I love you, Mom. I just want what's best for you." She pushed another form toward me. "This one gives me authority to speak with your doctors about your care. Privacy laws can be such a hassle in emergencies." "And this?" I held up a document I didn't recognize. "Oh, that's just permission for me to access your medical records. You know, in case something happens and you can't communicate your history to paramedics." Just permission. As if signing away my medical privacy was equivalent to lending her a cup of sugar. I set the papers down carefully, buying time by taking a long sip of coffee. Through the window, I saw Mark's car pulling back into the parking lot. Even from this distance, his distress was obvious. He sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, apparently steeling himself for return. "These are important documents," I said finally. "I should probably have my lawyer review them first." "Lawyers just complicate things," Sarah insisted. "This is family, Mom. You can trust me." Trust. The word hung between us like a bad smell. I thought of all the times I'd trusted Sarah over the years. Trusted her with money for college that went to parties. Trusted her to help with the business only to find she'd been gossiping about private financial information. Trusted her to be honest about her own finances while she and Mark apparently gambled away their savings. "You're right," I said, gathering the papers. "I'll take these home and review them carefully." "Why not just sign them now?" Sarah's mask slipped, slightly desperation creeping into her voice. "I have a pen right here." The restaurant door chimed, and Mark appeared walking stiffly toward our table. His face had lost all color and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He dropped into his chair like a man who'd run a marathon. "How was your work emergency?" I asked pleasantly. "Handled," he croaked, reaching for his water glass with shaking hands. Sarah shot him a questioning look. He gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head, which she clearly didn't appreciate. Her jaw tightened as she turned back to me. "Mom, we were just discussing your medical care planning. Mark, don't you think it's important for Mom to have everything in order?" "Absolutely," he mumbled, still looking pale. "See, we're all in agreement." Sarah pushed the pen toward me again. "Just a few signatures and we can all relax." "You know what?" I said, checking the time on my phone. "I just remembered I have a conference call with the Singapore development team in an hour. International projects wait for no one, not even birthdays." "Singapore." Sarah's voice pitched higher. "You're still taking on international projects?" "Of course. The marina complex renovation won't manage itself." I signaled for the check. "Thank you both for the lovely lunch. This has been very educational." "But Mom, we haven't discussed the retirement communities yet." Sarah scrambled to gather her documents. "I have brochures in the car." "Another time, dear." I stood noting how Mark flinched when I moved. "Mark, you really should see a doctor. You look terrible." As the server arrived with the check, I placed my credit card down before Sarah could protest. My phone buzzed with another notification. The security system had captured excellent footage of Mark's attempted break-in, including clear shots of his lockpicks and the tools he'd tried to use on my windows. But even better was the text from Jennifer. "Phase 1 complete. Banking records subpoenaed. Preliminary findings very interesting." I smiled at my daughter and her trembling husband. "Same place next month. I do so enjoy our family gatherings." Sarah's return smile looked more like a grimace. "Of course, Mom. We wouldn't miss it." As we walked to the parking lot, I made sure to admire Mark's new BMW up close. "Beautiful car," I commented. "The payment must be steep." "We manage," he muttered, fumbling with his keys. I patted his shoulder, feeling him tense under my touch. "I'm sure you do. Oh, and Mark, next time you need something from my house, just call. I recently upgraded my security system. Very sophisticated. It would be a shame if someone got hurt trying to navigate it without proper codes." The look of horror that passed between them was worth every penny I'd spent on those cameras. As I walked to my own car, I heard Sarah hiss something at Mark, followed by his defensive response. I drove away humming already, looking forward to reviewing the security footage in detail. Sarah thought she was playing chess, but she didn't realize I'd already captured her king. She just didn't know it yet. 20 minutes after leaving the restaurant, my phone rang as I sat in my home office reviewing the security footage from Mark's attempted break-in. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering, injecting a note of confusion into my voice. "Hello, Sarah. Didn't we just have lunch?" "Mom, I'm worried about you." Her words tumbled out in a rush. "You left so abruptly and you seemed disoriented. Are you home safely?" Disoriented. I glanced at my computer screen where 3 monitors displayed various angles of my property, the security system interface and bank records Jennifer had sent over. "Of course I'm home. Where else would I be?" "It's just, you mentioned a conference call with Singapore, but Mom, it's Saturday afternoon. Singapore would be closed." I allowed a pause as if caught in confusion. "Saturday. Are you sure?" "Yes, Mom, it's Saturday. Your birthday lunch, remember?" Her voice dripped with concern so fake it could have been artificial sweetener. "This is exactly what I was worried about. Confusion about time and appointments can be serious warning signs." Through my security camera, I watched a locksmith van pull into my driveway. The same company Mark had apparently called during his failed attempt. Interesting. "Oh my, you're right. How silly of me." I kept my tone light while sending a quick text to my security company. I must have been thinking of Monday's call. Mom, I really think we should talk about those documents I showed you, for your own protection. The locksmith approached my front door tools in hand. I activated the intercom system. Can I help you? I asked the man through the speaker. He jumped, looking around for the source of my voice. Yes, ma'am. I got a call about an emergency lockout. I'm not locked out. I'm sitting in my living room. But... He consulted his paperwork. Mark Stevens called, said his mother-in-law was locked out and confused. Sarah's voice continued through my phone. Mom, are you there? Who are you talking to? There's a locksmith at my door, I told her. He says Mark called him. Silence. Then, oh yes. Mark was worried when he stopped by earlier and you weren't home. He thought maybe you'd locked yourself out somewhere on the property. How thoughtful, I replied dryly, watching the locksmith retreat to his van. But as you can hear, I'm inside my house just fine. About those documents, Mom. Sarah, hold on. Someone's at the door again. I set the phone down without muting it, letting her hear my next conversation. The doorbell rang and I opened it to find my neighbor, retired police officer Jim Bradley, standing on my porch. Eve, everything okay? I saw some guy snooping around your property earlier. Looked like he was trying to jimmy your windows. Thank you for checking, Jim. That was my son-in-law. Apparently he was concerned about my security. Jim snorted. Funny way of showing it. I got his license plate and some photos if you need them. You're wonderful. Would you mind emailing those to me? Already done. That new security system of yours isn't the only thing watching out for you. He winked and headed back to his house. I returned to the phone where Sarah was practically hyperventilating. Mom, are you there? I'm here. Jim Bradley just stopped by. Such a lovely neighbor. Former police detective, you know. Very observant. Listen, Mom, about Mark checking on you. He was just worried. We both were. Worried enough to try breaking in? He wasn't. That's not. She took an audible breath. You're taking this the wrong way. We care about you. My computer chimed with an incoming email from Jennifer Watson. The subject line read, Urgent banking irregularities found. I opened it while Sarah continued her protests. Mom, I'm coming over. We need to talk in person. That's not necessary. I scanned Jennifer's email, my eyebrows rising at the information. I have dinner plans. With who, Mom? You just said you were confused about what day it is. I smiled at her attempt to trap me. I said I was confused about my Singapore call, not the day. My dinner is with Margaret. We've had it planned for weeks. My sister Margaret was actually in Houston, but Sarah didn't need to know that. I didn't know Aunt Margaret was in town. There's a lot you don't know, dear. I clicked through the bank records Jennifer had found. Multiple large cash withdrawals from Sarah and Mark's joint account corresponding with deposits at 3 different casinos. For instance, did you know the WinStar Casino has excellent security cameras? The sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, just making conversation. Although it's interesting that you claimed to need money for car repairs last month, when your account shows a $5,000 cash withdrawal the next day. How do you know about our account? Oh, did I forget to mention? When you borrowed that money, you signed a promissory note that included a financial disclosure clause. Standard practice in my business dealings, even with family. Especially with family. My doorbell rang again. This time, the security camera showed Dr. Harold Stern, the geriatric psychiatrist Sarah had mentioned at lunch. Hold on, dear. Another visitor. I opened the door with a polite smile. Dr. Stern, I presume. The elderly man looked confused. Mrs. Greene, I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but your daughter said this was an emergency evaluation. Did she now? I gestured for him to come in. Please have a seat. Can I get you some coffee, Sarah? I'm putting you on speaker. Dr. Stern is here. Oh, good. Sarah's relief was palpable. Dr. Stern, thank you for coming. My mother has been showing concerning signs of confusion and memory loss. Is that so? Dr. Stern accepted the coffee I offered. Mrs. Greene, do you know why I'm here? I assume my daughter called you for an emergency psychiatric evaluation to have me declared incompetent. I sat across from him, crossing my legs casually. She's been planning this for several months based on the paper trail she's left. Dr. Stern's eyebrows rose. That's quite an accusation. It's not an accusation if it's true. I pulled out my tablet and showed him the screenshots I'd been collecting. 6 weeks ago, she began calling various geriatric specialists inquiring about competency evaluations. She's contacted 3 separate retirement homes, specifically asking about their policies for residents who can't make their own decisions. She's also been in touch with a lawyer who specializes in guardianship proceedings. Dr. Stern, Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker, this is exactly what I mean. She's paranoid, making wild accusations. She also told several people I've been showing signs of dementia. I continued calmly, including her hairdresser, her yoga instructor, and at least 2 bank tellers at my branch. I have sworn affidavits from all of them. Dr. Stern set down his coffee cup carefully. Mrs. Greene, I have to say you seem remarkably lucid and organized for someone allegedly suffering from cognitive decline. Mom's good at putting on a show, Sarah interjected desperately. A show. I laughed. Like pretending to need money for car repairs while gambling away thousands, or having your husband attempt to break into my home while you keep me distracted at lunch. That's not, you can't prove. Actually, I can. I showed Dr. Stern the security footage on my tablet. High-definition cameras are wonderful technology. They even captured the serial numbers on the lockpicks Mark used. Dr. Stern stood up. Mrs. Greene, I apologize for the intrusion. It's clear you're perfectly competent. Mrs. Stevens, I'll be noting this incident in my records. Making false reports about someone's mental capacity is a serious matter. Wait, Sarah's voice pitched higher. You can't just leave. She needs help. The only help she needs is protection from family members trying to steal her assets, Dr. Stern replied curtly. Good day, Mrs. Greene. I'll send you my report confirming your mental competency. I walked him to the door, then returned to the phone where Sarah was breathing heavily. Shall I tell you what else I know? I asked conversationally. I know about the $500,000 gambling debt. I know about Bradley Walsh and his interest rates. I know Mark tried to forge my signature on a loan application last week. How could you possibly? Bradley Walsh's enforcer is named Tony. Nice man, actually. We had coffee yesterday. He was very interested to learn that you'd been promising my properties as collateral for your debts. Properties you don't own and never will. Mom, please, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You thought you could have me declared incompetent, take control of my assets, and use them to pay off your gambling debts. It's not even particularly creative. Do you know how many contractors have tried similar schemes over the years? My doorbell rang once more. This time, the camera showed Captain James Morrison in full uniform, accompanied by 2 other officers. Sarah, I need to go. The police are here. The police, Mom, what did you do? I almost laughed at the irony. It's not what I did, dear. It's what you and Mark did. Breaking and entering attempted fraud conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The list is quite long. Mom, wait, please. We can explain everything. I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunity to explain, to the judge. I ended the call and went to greet the officers. Captain Morrison, an old friend from my contractor days, shook his head as he entered. Eve, I'm sorry it's come to this. So am I, James, but she forced my hand. We have units heading to their house now. The security footage you provided along with the bank records and witness statements give us more than enough for arrests. I nodded, feeling a heaviness settle in my chest despite my preparations. This was my daughter, The little girl I'd raised alone, sacrificed for, built an empire to support. But that little girl was gone, replaced by a woman who saw me as nothing more than a bank account to raid. "There's more," I told him. "I believe if you check their home, you'll find evidence of additional fraud. Sarah's been practicing my signature, and there may be forged documents she hasn't tried to use yet." "We'll be thorough," James assured me. "Are you going to be okay?" I looked around my home, secured by the best system money could buy, protected by neighbors who cared and backed by lawyers who'd helped me build safeguards against exactly this scenario. "I'll be fine," I said, and meant it. But Sarah and Mark? They're about to learn what happens when you try to rob someone who spent 35 years dealing with construction fraud, mob-connected suppliers, and corporate thieves. As the officers left to coordinate the arrests, I poured myself a glass of wine and returned to my office. The security monitors showed my property peaceful and secure. The bank records showed my assets protected and growing. The business I'd built from nothing remained strong. Sarah had thought I was just a confused old woman, easy prey for her schemes. She'd forgotten that I was Eve Greene, who'd buried a husband, raised a daughter alone, and built a construction empire in a man's world. I'd faced down bigger predators than my own daughter, and I'd survived them all. The phone rang again. Sarah's number. I let it go to voicemail, then blocked it. There would be time for lawyers and legal proceedings, time for consequences and perhaps someday redemption. But tonight, I had a real dinner to attend. Not with Margaret, but with Jennifer Watson and the team of lawyers who'd helped me protect everything I'd worked for. We had papers to file and strategies to discuss. The war for my assets was over before Sarah even knew it had begun. Because she'd forgotten the most important rule in construction: always check the foundation before you try to build. And my foundation was solid steel and concrete, reinforced by decades of hard-won wisdom. Sarah thought she was playing against a vulnerable old woman. Instead, she'd challenged a survivor. And survivors don't just endure, they triumph. The Dallas County Court building's limestone facade gleamed in the morning sun as I climbed the steps, my heels clicking against worn stone. 3 days had passed since Sarah and Mark's arrests, and today's emergency hearing would determine their immediate fate. Jennifer Watson walked beside me, her briefcase containing enough evidence to bury them both. "Remember," Jennifer murmured as we passed through security, "let them hang themselves. The more they talk, the deeper they dig." I nodded, my expression carefully neutral despite the phone calls that had flooded in over the weekend. Sarah's friends suddenly concerned about my well-being after years of silence. Mark's mother weeping about her baby boy being falsely accused. Even Tommy's teacher wondering if I could pick him up from school since his parents were indisposed. Courtroom 4B was smaller than expected, with wood paneling that had seen better decades and fluorescent lights that hummed like angry wasps. I took my seat behind the prosecutor's table, noting the handful of observers. Among them sat my sister Margaret, who'd flown in from Houston the moment she heard. Her presence steadied me. The side door opened and Sarah shuffled in wearing Orange County jail scrubs, her wrists shackled. The designer makeup was gone, replaced by smeared mascara and hollow eyes. Mark followed his usual swagger, reduced to a defeated slouch. They sat with their public defender, a harried-looking woman named Patricia Chen, who'd probably seen too many family fraud cases to be shocked by this one. Judge Rosemary Harrison, a silver-haired woman with sharp eyes, took her seat. "This emergency hearing is to address bail and immediate custody concerns in the case of Texas versus Stevens. Prosecutor Williams, please summarize the charges." The assistant district attorney stood, his voice carrying clearly. "Your Honor, the defendants are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted breaking and entering, elder abuse forgery, and filing false reports. The evidence includes security footage, banking records, and witness testimonies documenting a months-long scheme to have Mrs. Eve Greene declared incompetent in order to seize control of her assets valued at approximately $12 million. Sarah made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to acknowledge her attempts to catch my attention. The state requests bail be set at $500,000 each given the defendant's significant debts and potential flight risk. Your Honor. Patricia Chen rose, her voice strained. My clients are parents with young children. They have no previous criminal records and strong community ties. Strong ties to bookies and loan sharks, Williams interrupted. We have evidence of a $500,000 gambling debt to known criminal Bradley Walsh, who has already been arrested in connection with this case. Judge Harrison's eyebrows rose. Criminal connections, Ms. Chen. Alleged connections, the defender corrected weakly. My clients made some poor financial decisions, but never intended harm to Mrs. Greene. Then how do you explain this? Williams activated a screen showing security footage of Mark with his lockpicks. Or this, forms appeared showing Sarah's practiced forgeries of my signature. Or this, a recorded phone call played Sarah's voice clear. Once Stern signs the papers, we can move forward with the trust transfer. The courtroom fell silent except for the recording. Sarah's shoulders shook as she heard her own words plotting my financial destruction. Judge Harrison turned to me. Mrs. Greene, do you wish to make a statement regarding bail? I stood slowly gathering decades of public speaking experience. Your Honor, I spent 35 years building my business and raising my daughter after my husband's death. I gave Sarah every opportunity, paid for her education, helped with her wedding, established trusts for her children. In return, she tried to steal not just my money, but my freedom and dignity. My voice remained steady despite the pain underneath. She told people I was losing my mind. She called doctors trying to have me committed. She sent her husband to break into my home while pretending to celebrate my birthday. So yes, I believe bail should be substantial. Not because I want revenge, but because I want protection. Mom, please, Sarah burst out, earning a sharp look from her attorney. I'm sorry, we were desperate. Bradley Walsh said he'd hurt the kids if we didn't pay. Then you should have come to me, I replied directly to her for the first time. Instead, you chose betrayal. Judge Harrison raised her hand for silence. Bail is set at $300,000 each. Additionally, defendants are ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Greene except through attorneys. Temporary custody of the minor children will need to be addressed. Mrs. Greene, are you willing to take custody? I've already filed the necessary paperwork, Jennifer provided. Mrs. Greene has suitable accommodations and resources for the children. The children should stay with their parents. Mark finally spoke, his face red. You can't take our kids. You should have considered that before attempting to rob their grandmother, Judge Harrison responded coldly. Temporary custody is granted to Mrs. Greene pending full family court review. Next issue. Williams stood again. Your Honor, we'd like to address the scope of the conspiracy. Our investigation has revealed this wasn't an isolated attempt. The defendants have been building toward this for over 6 months. He presented a timeline that made my stomach turn. Sarah's first call to a geriatric specialist coincided with their first major gambling loss. Every step had been calculated, from her sudden interest in my health to the specific lawyers and doctors she'd contacted. Furthermore, Williams continued, we've discovered Sarah Stevens attempted to access her mother's bank account 17 times in the past 3 months, each time claiming to be checking on concerning transactions as a worried daughter. Those attempts were blocked, Judge Harrison asked. Yes, due to Mrs. Greene's security protocols, but the attempts themselves constitute fraud. Patricia Chen objected weakly, but the evidence was overwhelming. bank records, emails, text messages between Sarah and Mark, planning each phase. The depth of their deception stunned even me, and I'd thought I was prepared. "Your Honor," a new voice spoke from the gallery. Dr. Patricia Chen, my actual physician, had arrived. "May I address the court?" Judge Harrison nodded, and my doctor took the stand after being sworn in. "I've been Mrs. Greene's physician for 20 years, she stated firmly. "Last month, Sarah Stevens called my office 9 times trying to schedule cognitive evaluations for her mother. When I refused without Mrs. Greene's consent, she tried to impersonate her on the phone. My receptionist recognized the deception and documented it. Did Mrs. Stevens give a reason for her concern? She claimed her mother was showing signs of dementia. However, Mrs. Greene had just passed her annual physical with flying colors. Her cognitive function tests were perfect. She's healthier than most 50-year-olds. Sarah sobbed louder, but I noticed she kept glancing at the door as if expecting rescue. Perhaps she still believed I'd cave-drop the charges, make this all go away, like I'd fixed her problems so many times before. "There's one more matter," Williams announced. "We've been contacted by 3 other families who believe the defendants may have attempted similar schemes. Apparently, Mrs. Stevens worked at a senior care facility 2 years ago and was terminated for irregularities in her interactions with residents' families. This was news to me. Sarah had told me she'd left that job for better opportunities. We're requesting permission to expand our investigation," Williams concluded. Judge Harrison nodded grimly. "Granted. This case is bound over for grand jury. Defendants will remain in custody unless bail is posted. Court is adjourned." The gavel struck like thunder. Sarah tried to turn toward me as the bailiffs approached, her face a mask of desperation. Mom, please think of Tommy and Emma. They need their mother." I finally met her eyes. "They need stability and honesty. They'll have both with me." "You're destroying our lives," Mark shouted as they were led away. "Over money, just like the rich witch everyone says you are." Margaret appeared at my side, her hand on my elbow. "Steady," she whispered. But I didn't need steadying. Each revelation had only confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't a momentary lapse or desperation driving basically good people to a single bad decision. This was calculated predation by 2 people who saw me not as family, but as a resource to be exploited. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Jennifer and I had prepared for this. "Mrs. Greene, how does it feel to have your own daughter arrested?" I paused on the steps, choosing my words carefully. "It feels like loss, but not just of my daughter, of the illusion that family bonds mean protection from predators. Elder abuse often comes from those we trust most. I hope my story encourages others to protect themselves, even from those they love." "Will you drop the charges?" "No. Actions have consequences. My daughter forgot that lesson. Perhaps prison will remind her." As we reached the car, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake Martinez, my security installer. "Saw the news. Offering free consultations for seniors worried about family fraud. You inspired me, Mrs. G." Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. If my pain could prevent others from suffering similar betrayal, perhaps something good could emerge from this nightmare. "The kids?" Margaret asked as we drove away. "I'm picking them up from school in an hour. Their rooms are already prepared." "And Sarah?" I watched the courthouse shrink in the rearview mirror. Sarah made her choices. Now she lives with them, just as I'll live with mine. The difference was my choices had built an empire and protected it. Hers had destroyed a family and landed her in a cell. As we drove toward the school, I thought about second chances and redemption. Perhaps someday Sarah would earn both. But first she'd learn what I'd learned at 16, suddenly fatherless, and facing an uncertain world. Survival requires strength. Success demands sacrifice and trust. Once broken, takes years to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. The conference room at Watson Hartley and Associates commanded a corner view of downtown Dallas, its glass walls reflecting the city Sarah and Mark had tried to steal from me piece by piece. Jennifer Watson had assembled what she called the full team: 2 forensic accountants, a fraud specialist, and a private investigator who looked like someone's grandfather until you noticed his eyes missed nothing. Eve, what we've uncovered goes beyond family betrayal. Jennifer began sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. Your daughter and son-in-law were part of something larger. I opened the folder, immediately recognizing Sarah's handwriting on the first document. But it wasn't my signature she'd been practicing. It was Margaret's, my sister's. Then Ellen Morrison's, my neighbor. Then Patricia Sullivan's, my former business partner who'd retired to Florida last year. She wasn't just coming after me. No. The investigator Carl Brennan pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Sarah Stevens was building a blueprint for elder fraud. She'd identified 17 potential targets, all women over 65 with substantial assets and family connections that could be exploited. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. There was my daughter's neat handwriting listing pros and cons for each target. Under my name, pros: widowed, works long hours, trusts family. Cons: sharp, has security, good lawyers. The gambling debts were real, the forensic accountant David Park added. But they were also cover. Sarah and Mark were funneling money to Bradley Walsh, not just for debts, but as investment in a larger operation. Investment. I set down my cup before my shaking hands could spill it. Walsh ran more than illegal gambling. He had a whole division dedicated to elder fraud. Sarah was supposed to be his inside person, using her connections in the senior care industry to identify targets. Jennifer pulled out another file. Remember that job she lost 2 years ago? We found 3 families who filed complaints. Small items went missing after Sarah visited. Jewelry, cash, blank checks. Nothing was proven, but the pattern was there. I thought of all the times Sarah had visited my home recently, how she'd wandered through rooms while I made tea, opened drawers, looking for a pen, admired things she'd never noticed before. What about my properties? Were any actually compromised? David consulted his notes. She tried Eve. God, did she try. But your security protocols held. Every bank, every title company, every institution she approached had multiple verification requirements she couldn't bypass. You built your walls high. Not high enough to keep her from trying to declare me incompetent. Actually, Carl interjected, that was desperation. Plan A through Plan F had failed. The incompetency route was her last shot, and she rushed it. That's why it fell apart so quickly. Jennifer activated another screen showing bank records. Here's where it gets worse. The $500,000 they owed, that was last month. The real debt was closer to $800,000. They'd been paying interest with money borrowed from other sources, including... She paused, and I knew whatever came next would hurt. Including Tommy and Emma's college funds, the ones you set up. Sarah found a way to access them as custodian and drain them both. About $200,000 total. The room tilted. Those funds were meant to secure my grandchildren's futures, carefully structured to be untouchable until they turned 18. But I'd made Sarah custodian, trusting her to protect her own children's interests. How? She convinced a bank officer she needed the money for the children's medical emergencies. Forged documents showing Tommy needed experimental treatment for a condition he doesn't have. The bank is investigating their own procedures now. I stood and walked to the window, needing distance from the evidence of my daughter's complete moral collapse. Below, Dallas bustled with life, unaware of the woman 30 floors up discovering the child she'd raised was a stranger. There's more, Carl said gently. We tracked her communications with Walsh's organization. She provided detailed information about 6 other families. 2 were approached but got suspicious. 1 lost $30,000 before realizing something was wrong. Who? Dorothy Kimball from her book club. The woman is too embarrassed to press charges, but she confirmed Sarah introduced her to a financial advisor who turned out to be one of Walsh's people. I returned to the table, fury replacing shock. So my daughter wasn't just trying to rob me, she was helping rob other innocent people. The evidence suggests she was being groomed for a bigger role, Carl confirmed. Walsh kept referring to her as management material in intercepted communications. If she'd succeeded with you the biggest score, she'd have proven herself worthy of running her own crew. Jennifer touched my arm. Eve, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to discuss next steps. The federal authorities want to interview you. This crosses state lines, involves mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy charges that go well beyond what Dallas County is pursuing. Federal prison, I said flatly. You're telling me my daughter is looking at federal prison. Without your cooperation, possibly 10 to 15 years. With it, if she provides evidence against Walsh's organization, maybe 5 to 7. 5 to 7 years. Emma would be in middle school, Tommy in high school, their mother a federal inmate, their father likely facing similar time. All for money they burned through at casino tables and luxury purchases while pretending poverty. What about the children's futures? Can we recover any of the money? David pulled out actuarial charts. Your personal assets remain protected. As for recovery, Walsh's assets are being seized. There might be partial restitution. I recommend establishing new trusts for the children, ones with multiple trustees and no parental access whatsoever. I want Margaret as co-trustee, I decided, and Jennifer, 3-person approval for any distributions. Wise, Jennifer agreed, making notes. Now about Sarah's co-conspirators. The presentation continued for 2 more hours. Names, dates, financial transfers, forged documents. My daughter hadn't just crossed a line. She'd obliterated it, leaving scorched earth where family trust once grew. By the end, we'd identified 12 elderly victims, $3 million in attempted theft, and connections to similar operations in Oklahoma and Louisiana. Sarah, my baby girl who'd cried for 3 days when her goldfish died, had become a professional predator targeting society's vulnerable. Will testifying against her help the other victims? Carl nodded emphatically. Your testimony could break open cases in 3 states. You're the one who got away, Eve, the one with resources to fight back. Your evidence gives voices to those too frightened or ashamed to speak up. I thought of Dorothy Kimball, too embarrassed to admit she'd been swindled, of the retirement home residents Sarah had befriended then betrayed, of the futures she'd tried to steal. Schedule the federal interview, I instructed Jennifer. I'll provide everything they need. Eve, Jennifer's voice softened. No one would blame you for protecting Sarah. She's still your daughter. No. The word came out harder than intended. My daughter disappeared somewhere between learning right from wrong and choosing wrong anyway. The woman in custody is a predator who happens to share my DNA. The victims deserve justice more than she deserves protection. As we prepared to leave, Carl handed me a final folder. One more thing. We found a notebook in Sarah's home. You should see this. I opened it to find pages of my daily routines. When I left for work, returned home, went to bed. Which doctors I saw, which restaurants I frequented, which friends I trusted. She'd been stalking me for months, documenting patterns, looking for weaknesses. The last entry, dated the day before my birthday lunch, chilled me. Mom getting suspicious. Move timeline up. Mark says locks tomorrow or Walsh will send his own people. Can't let that happen. Mom's mine to handle. Mine to handle. Like I was a project, not a person. A problem to be solved, not a mother to be loved. I closed the notebook and handed it back. Add it to the evidence. Let the jury see exactly who Sarah Stevens really is. As I rode the elevator down, I thought about nature versus nurture, about where I'd gone wrong. Had I spoiled her after Robert's death, trying to compensate for her loss? Had I worked too much, leaving her to find her own moral compass? But then I thought of Tommy and Emma's sweet children despite their parents' influence, of my own childhood raised by parents who struggled but never stooped to theft, of the thousands of chances Sarah had to choose differently. Some people, I realized, simply choose darkness, even when raised in light. The federal interview was scheduled for the following Monday. By then, I'd have steeled myself to reveal every detail of my daughter's betrayal, not for revenge, but for justice. And maybe, just maybe, to save other mothers from discovering their children had become monsters hiding behind familiar faces. Sarah wanted to handle me. She'd learn what handling really meant when federal prosecutors finished with her, and I'd be there not as her safety net, but as her reckoning. The federal building in downtown Dallas felt appropriately cold for a Monday morning that would determine my daughter's fate. Special Agent Rachel Torres led me through security checkpoints to a sterile interview room where 3 other agents waited with boxes of evidence I'd helped compile. "Mrs. Greene, thank you for coming." Agent Torres began, her voice professional, but not unkind. "Before we start, I want you to know that Sarah has been informed of this interview. Her attorney advised her to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Has she agreed?" "She's considering her options. Your testimony today might influence that decision." I sat straighter, understanding the weight of my words. Each truth I spoke would either save Sarah years in prison or condemn her to them, depending on whether she chose cooperation over continued defiance. "Let's begin with the timeline." Agent Torres opened a file thick with my daughter's deceptions. "When did you first notice unusual behavior?" For the next 4 hours, I laid bare every detail: the sudden interest in my health, the pushed medical appointments, the financial probing disguised as concern. The agents took notes, occasionally exchanging glances as the scope of Sarah's plan became clear. "This notebook," Agent Michael Chen held up Sarah's surveillance notes on me, "shows premeditation spanning 7 months. Did you have any indication she was documenting your routines?" "None. I thought her increased visits meant she was finally interested in family connection." The irony burned. Instead, she was casing my life like a burglar cases a house. Agent Torres produced phone records. "These calls to Bradley Walsh's organization began 9 months ago. Initial contact appears related to gambling debts, but by month 3, the conversations shift. Walsh starts using terms like investment opportunity and upper management potential. Can you think of any reason Sarah would see you as her entry point into professional fraud?" The question I'd tortured myself with for days. I was successful widowed, and she knew I'd always bailed her out before. Perfect target for a test run. "Had you bailed her out previously?" I detailed the history: college debts I'd covered, the wedding I'd paid for despite her insistence on a venue beyond their means, the car loans, credit card bills, always with promises to repay that never materialized. "Classic escalation pattern," Agent Chen noted. "Each successful manipulation builds confidence for bigger schemes." "When did you stop enabling this behavior?" 6 months ago. She asked for $50,000 for a business investment, but couldn't provide basic details. I offered to review the business plan instead of writing a check. She was furious. That timing aligns with her increased contact with Walsh. Rejection triggered acceleration. My phone buzzed. Jennifer texted that Tommy and Emma were asking for their mother again. 5 days of explaining why Mommy and Daddy couldn't come home was wearing on all of us. "The children," Agent Torres noted my glance at the phone. "How are they handling this?" "They're confused hurt. Tommy knows something serious happened but protects his sister from details. They're in therapy starting tomorrow. Good. They'll need support, especially when this goes public. Which brings us to the wider conspiracy. The conference room screen lit up with a web of connections that looked like a demented family tree. Sarah's name connected to 6 elderly victims with dotted lines to 11 more potential targets. Your daughter maintained detailed files on each person, Agent David Kim explained. Financial estimates, family dynamics, vulnerabilities to exploit. She was building a franchise operation. Franchise. Walsh ran his elder fraud like a multi-level marketing scheme. Recruit operators, train them on small scores, promote successful ones to bigger targets. Sarah was fast-tracking due to her existing connections and clear lack of conscience. Lack of conscience. Such clinical words for my daughter's missing soul. We need to discuss the confrontation call, Agent Torres said carefully. Sarah has requested to speak with you. Her attorney believes it might motivate cooperation if she hears directly how her actions affected you. Are you willing? I dreaded this moment while knowing it was inevitable. Will it be recorded? Yes, with full disclosure to both parties. Anything said can be used in court. Then yes, let her face what she's done. They set up the call in an adjacent room, a simple phone on a simple desk. Agent Torres remained as witness. The phone rang twice before a mechanical voice announced the call was from federal detention. Mom! Sarah's voice sounded smaller, younger, stripped of its recent calculating edge. I'm here, Sarah. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be temporary, just until we figured out the debts. Stop. I kept my voice level despite my clenched fists. Don't insult both of us with lies. I've seen your notebooks, your target lists, the other families you helped destroy. Silence, then a shaky breath. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Walsh's people threatened the kids. Which is why you should have come to me. Instead, you offered me up as payment. You have so much money. The words exploded out, finally honest in their ugliness. $12 million while we struggled. Do you know what it's like watching your mother live in luxury while you can't pay basic bills? Bills for what, Sarah? The BMW, the designer handbags, the gambling debts you accumulated while lying about being broke. You always throw money in my face. I never threw anything. I offered education opportunities trust. You threw those away for casino chips and easy marks. I'm not a criminal. She was crying now, but they sounded like tears of frustration, not remorse. I just needed help and you turned your back on me. I offered help. Real help. Business plans, financial counseling, job connections. You wanted blank checks, not solutions. Because you always have to control everything. Even now you took my kids. You stole their college funds. My voice rose for the first time. $200,000 meant for their futures gone to feed your gambling addiction. You violated the one sacred trust a parent has, protecting their children's opportunities. Sobbing now, real tears perhaps, but for herself, not her victims. Sarah, the federal agents tell me you could serve 5 to 7 years instead of 15 if you cooperate. Tell them about Walsh's organization, help recover what was stolen, show genuine remorse for the elderly people you targeted. Targeted, Mom, they were just names on a list. Dorothy Kimball is 78 years old. The $30,000 she lost was her late husband's life insurance. She can't afford her heart medication now. Still just a name. More silence. In it, I heard the echo of every moral lesson I'd tried to teach, every example I'd set, building my business ethically, every principle she'd absorbed and then discarded. Will you visit me if I cooperate? The question I dreaded. That depends on you. True cooperation means admitting everything, making amends where possible, and accepting consequences. If you do that, if you show genuine change, then we'll see. We'll see I'm your daughter. My daughter wouldn't have stalked me for 7 months planning my financial destruction. My daughter wouldn't have stolen from children and elderly neighbors. The woman on this call is someone I'm still learning to recognize. I hate you. The words came out venomous, the real Sarah finally showing. This is all your fault. If you'd just given me what I deserved. What you deserved. You mean what you felt entitled to. There's a difference between deserving and earning, Sarah. I tried to teach you that. Save your lectures for Tommy and Emma. I'm sure you'll turn them against me too. I'll tell them the truth when they're old enough to understand. What they think of you will depend on who you become from here. The call ended with Sarah's bitter laugh and a dial tone that sounded like finality. Agent Torres waited quietly as I composed myself. That was hard to hear, but necessary. She's not ready to change. Maybe federal prison will teach what I couldn't. We returned to the main conference room where the other agents had been monitoring. Their expressions mixed professional interest with human sympathy. She'll likely take the plea now, Agent Chen observed. Pride makes people refuse cooperation until they realize the alternative. 15 years is a long time to nurse grudges. What happens next? Grand jury convenes Thursday. With your testimony and evidence, indictments are certain. Trial in approximately 6 months, unless plea agreements are reached. Walsh's organization is crumbling, so deals will be offered to anyone providing substantial assistance. And the victims. Restitution fund being established from seized assets. Not full recovery, but something. Your testimony helps establish the pattern that makes recovery possible. I signed final statements, provided last clarifications, and prepared to leave when Agent Torres stopped me. Mrs. Greene, I've worked financial crimes for 15 years. Family situations are the hardest, but what you're doing, standing up speaking truth, it matters. Elder fraud thrives in shadow and shame. You're dragging it into light. Small comfort when the criminal is your own child. Maybe, but Tommy and Emma will grow up knowing their grandmother chose justice over easy lies. That's the real legacy here. I left the federal building as afternoon sun warmed Dallas despite the December chill. My phone showed messages from Margaret, from Jennifer, from job superintendents needing decisions. Life continuing despite personal catastrophe. That evening, I sat with Tommy and Emma for dinner. We'd established new routines already. Homework at the kitchen table, story time on the couch, walks through the neighborhood where Mark once tried to break in. Normal moments building abnormal childhood. Grandma Eve, Emma asked over spaghetti she insisted on cutting herself. When is Mommy coming home? Not for a while, sweetheart. She and Daddy made some bad choices and have to face consequences. Like timeout? Like a very long timeout, yes. Tommy, older and more perceptive, pushed meatballs around his plate. Mom tried to hurt you, didn't she? That's why the police came. No point in lying to a child who'd already seen too much truth. She made mistakes that hurt several people, including me. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. How can someone love you and hurt you? The question every abuse survivor faces. Sometimes people get so lost in their own problems they forget how to love properly. But that's their failing, not yours. You and Emma are perfect exactly as you are. Will we be safe here? Completely safe, I promise. That night after tucking them in, I stood in my home office looking at family photos spanning decades. Sarah as a baby, toddler, teenager, young woman. When had the bright-eyed child become a calculating predator? Was there a moment I missed a turn I could have prevented? But dwelling on what-ifs wouldn't help Tommy and Emma build better futures. They needed stability, love, and examples of integrity their parents failed to provide. I could give them those things along with the tools to make better choices. Sarah would serve her time hopefully learning what freedom cost. Mark would face his own reckoning. Bradley Walsh's organization would crumble protecting future victims. And I would continue building, Not just structures of steel and concrete, but character in two grandchildren who deserved better than the hand they'd been dealt. It wasn't the legacy I'd planned, but it was the one needed. Justice had been served. Now came the harder work of healing. 6 months had passed since that December day when Tommy and Emma first called my house home. Now, on a warm June morning, I watched them race across the construction site, their child-sized hard hats bobbing as they explored the foundation of the women's shelter I was building. The project had grown from a simple donation to a full community initiative with my company providing labor and expertise at cost. "Grandma Eve, look," Emma pointed to workers pouring concrete. "They're making the floor strong like you taught us." "That's right, sweetheart. Everything good starts with a solid foundation." Tommy, now more confident than the withdrawn boy I'd taken in, was sketching the scene in a notebook. He'd shown artistic talent these past months, finding peace in drawing what words couldn't express about his parents' absence. "Mrs. Greene." Jake Martinez approached tablet in hand. "The security company wants to film a testimonial here if you're willing. They've had hundreds of seniors request consultations since your story broke." My story. It had indeed broken, making national news when Sarah received 8 years in federal prison after finally cooperating against Walsh's organization. Her testimony helped convict 17 other fraud operators across 4 states. Mark got 6 years serving in a different facility. Their letters to the children went through Jennifer's office, carefully screened for manipulation. "I'll do it," I agreed. "Elder fraud prevention needs every voice possible." As Jake coordinated with the film crew, Margaret arrived with lunch for everyone. My sister had moved to Dallas permanently, taking early retirement to help with the children. Our relationship, always cordial but distant, had deepened through shared purpose. "Sarah's attorney called," Margaret said quietly while the kids distributed sandwiches to grateful workers. "She wants to add you to her visitation list." 8 months of silence since that bitter phone call, then last week's letter. 10 pages of what might have been genuine remorse, though I'd learned not to trust easily where Sarah was concerned. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think those kids need to know their mother isn't a complete monster, even if she acted like one. And maybe she needs to see what real love looks like, not the enabling she expected." Dr. Patricia Chen approached our impromptu picnic table. She'd become a friend through this ordeal, offering guidance on helping the children process trauma while building resilience. "Eve, I have news. The state approved our grant proposal. The Elder Care Fraud Prevention Program can launch this fall." Another piece of rebuilding. We'd designed a comprehensive program combining education, legal resources, and psychological support for families dealing with financial exploitation. My pain transformed into purpose. "That's wonderful. Dorothy Kimball will be pleased." Dorothy had become an unexpected ally, finding courage to testify once she knew others shared her experience. Now she helped lead support groups for elder fraud victims, her natural warmth healing shame with shared understanding. "Grandma Eve." Emma ran up concrete dust on her overalls. "Mr. Rodriguez says I can push the button for the cement mixer, can I please? If you follow all safety rules and listen to instructions." She scampered off, fearless in ways that reminded me of Sarah at that age, before choices twisted love into greed. Jennifer arrived as lunch wound down, carrying documents that would finalize the new trust structures for the children. Triple oversight educational milestones required for distributions and ironclad protection against parental interference. "Sarah's restitution payment started," she reported. "Prison wages aren't much, but she's contributing what she can to the victims' fund." A small gesture, perhaps meaningless against the damage done, but it marked a choice to give rather than take, however minimal. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "The federal prosecutor called. They're creating a task force on elder fraud, want you as a civilian advisor." Your construction background gives unique perspective on how predators build their schemes. I'll consider it. Truth was, I'd already decided yes. Every opportunity to prevent another family's destruction felt like redemption for failing to prevent my own. Tommy approached with his sketchbook, showing me his latest drawing. It depicted our family as it existed now. Him, Emma, me, and Aunt Margaret standing before a house that looked both like my home and the shelter being built. Strong foundations supporting reaching walls. It's beautiful, I told him. What will you call it? Starting over, he said simply, because that's what we're doing right. Starting over better. Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly what we're doing. The afternoon continued with productivity and promise. Workers raised walls on foundation we'd poured months ago. Children learned that building meant more than physical construction. Hearts slowly mended through purpose and routine. As sunset approached, painting the Dallas sky in shades of hope, I stood with my reconfigured family watching dreams take shape in concrete and steel. The wealth Sarah had coveted meant nothing compared to this. The chance to build futures from ruins of betrayal. Time to go home. I announced, gathering hard hats and notepads. Will Mommy ever come home? Emma asked, taking my hand. Someday, I answered honestly. But home will be different then. We'll all be different. Better different or worse different. Tommy answered for me wisdom beyond his 9 years showing. Better different, because Grandma Eve is teaching us to build things right. That night, after baths and bedtime stories, I sat in my office writing my own letter. Not to Sarah. That would come when readiness replaced anger. But to the grandmother I'd become through crisis, the woman who'd learned that sometimes destruction precedes stronger construction. The phone rang, showing the detention center's number. Sarah using her weekly call privilege. I let it go to voicemail, not ready yet, but no longer bitter. Healing happened on its own timeline, not prison schedules. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The shelter construction, the fraud prevention program, 2 children needing guidance toward better choices than their parents made. A federal task force position helping protect vulnerable elders. A daughter in prison possibly learning what I couldn't teach her at home. But tonight I had peace. The kind that comes from surviving betrayal with integrity intact. From choosing justice over enabling. From building new foundations when old ones crumbled. Sarah thought my money made me valuable. She never understood my true worth lay in the strength to say no, the wisdom to see through deception, and the courage to protect others from harm, even when the harm came from her. The emerald necklace Robert gave me caught lamplight as I moved. Still beautiful, still treasured like the memories of the family we'd once been. But I no longer wore it as reminder of loss. Now it symbolized resilience, precious things surviving attempts to steal their light. Everything strong starts with a solid base, I'd told Emma, in buildings and in life. The foundation was set. Now we built toward sky, one truthful day at a time. Sarah would serve her years learning what freedom cost. The children would grow knowing love meant boundaries, not blank checks. And I would continue constructing shelters for the vulnerable, programs for the targeted, futures for the innocent. My phone buzzed with tomorrow's schedule. Meetings, inspections, therapy appointments, homework, help. The business of living fully after betrayal. I smiled, remembering Sarah's whispered words at that birthday lunch. While I distract her, she had distracted me all right. Distracted me from the small life of comfortable complacency into a larger purpose. Her betrayal became my catalyst, her greed, my call to greater service. The ultimate irony in trying to steal my life. Sarah had given me a better one. Not the life I'd planned, but the one needed. The one where 2 grandchildren learned that strength meant protecting others, Success meant lifting the fallen, and family meant those who chose love over exploitation. I closed my office and checked on sleeping children one last time. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight we were safe growing building. And that was enough. That was everything. As I reflect on this journey from betrayal to renewal, I'm reminded that family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, and the choices we make every day to protect or prey upon those we claim to love. Sarah forgot that lesson, but Tommy and Emma learn it daily through actions, not words. To those reading this who faced similar betrayal, you're not alone. Your pain is valid, your anger justified, and your choice to seek justice rather than enable further harm is courageous. Build your boundaries high and strong. Protect your foundations. And remember that sometimes the greatest love we can show is refusing to participate in someone's self-destruction. What boundaries have you had to build to protect yourself from those who confused love with entitlement? How do you teach children to value earning over taking? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking and sharing it with others who might need to hear that surviving family betrayal is possible. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and rebuilding. Together, we can break the silence around elder abuse and family fraud. Thank you for joining me on this difficult but necessary journey. May your foundations be strong, your boundaries respected, and your trust well placed in those who prove themselves worthy through actions, not words. Until next time, remember, everything strong starts with a solid foundation. Build yours wisely.